We're pack animals. We got to be accepted. When we speak, we put ourselves in the position of possibly being rejected. And our default brain says, worst case scenario, nobody's going to like this. Everyone's going to hate me and throw rotten tomatoes. And so our brain is set to default worst case scenario. We get rejected by the pack. So we overcome this first through visualization of imagining the successful delivery of the speech, which you and I can do because we have historical evidence. We got on that stage. We did a great job. We got a standing ovation. People came up to us and said, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. Thank you so much. And when that happens enough times, your brain is now overridden with this like rotten tomato, everyone's going to hate it situation to, I'm actually pretty good at this.
This is the Anthropology Podcast, the podcast where we optimize the bodies, brains, and lifestyles of entrepreneurs, go-getters, and world-changing innovators.
Welcome to the Anthropology Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Walker. As a naturopathic doctor and anthropologist, I optimize the health and performance of badass women working to change the world as entrepreneurs and go-getters. You know, people exactly like you. Your business, body, balance, and inner badass. These are the themes we are exploring. So I asked you guys, you told me, in addition to talking about health and mindset, what you really wanted to also know were some fantastic strategies in order to grow your business and your mission. Today, I am joined by an amazing strategist, Majeed Mogharreban, and Majeed's expertise in this world is teaching people to become an incredible public speaker, not just having the confidence to step out on stage, but having the confidence to share your story and your message in a way that is going to drive more traffic to whatever it is that you are putting out into the world. Majeed has worked with countless experts who have graced hundreds of stages, and he's also worked with my own mastermind and a lot of my coaching students, and they have seen incredible results. I'm so excited to have Majeed here today because he is dropping knowledge bombs like we have not dropped in a while. Absolutely practical tips that you can use to get over your fear of speaking. We talk about the 3 types of stories you need to look at having in your signature talk. And then we talk about the silent attributes that every audience member is checking off in their head when they're trying to decide whether they want to work with you further. This information and this entire episode was just chock full of truth bombs and knowledge gems and all sorts of things that are going to be incredibly helpful to move your mission forward. It is truly an honor to welcome my guest today, Majeed Mogharreban. Majeed Mogharreban, welcome to the Anthropology Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I am looking forward to this. We ran a workshop together virtually last month. We had a ton of really great feedback about that. And the Anthropology Podcast is really about talking about the body, business, and inner badass of female entrepreneurs. And today we're really going to get into the business piece. We're going to talk about stories. We're going to talk about speaking, everyone's biggest fear in the world. And I would really love for you, before we delve into this really awesome content, for you to give our listeners some context in terms of how you became the expert speaker coach that you are.
Well, that's a fun story. So I like to introduce myself as Majeed like magic because I try to be unforgettable, and my last name is hard to pronounce, although you did a great job.
Thanks.
Majeed Mogharreban. So there I was as a young teenager. My mother was depressed. She was on Prozac. The doctor said more Prozac, less Prozac, and nobody knew what to do. Until one day she went to a motivational seminar. And we were all very skeptical of these rah-rah high-five parties, right? Never been to one before, but my mom came back totally changed. New lease on life, full of energy, and she said, Majeed, you got to check this out. You're going to love it. So she brought me out to what they call the preview night. It's free. You can bring your family and friends. And there I am sitting in the front row, watching this guy with a suit, jumping around the stage. Everyone's high-fiving, clapping, hugging, cheering. People coming on stage saying, this changed my life. It's the best thing ever. And then my mother leans over to me, taps me on the shoulder, and whispers into my ear. And she says, Majeed, one day that could be you. And the seed was planted, and I thought, I could be a motivational speaker. But how does one make money as a motivational speaker? So I went out to find how do you get paid to speak. And I heard people get paid to speak. I heard people, they pay for your flights, they pay for your hotel, they even give you a fee to speak on a stage. Just I didn't know how I'm supposed to be able to do that. So slowly but surely, I figured out how to make a couple bucks here, a couple bucks there. Literally, the first time was a $25 gift certificate to Starbucks, the first time I got paid to speak. And eventually I got paid a couple hundred, and I got 500 and 1,000. And eventually I made up to $10,000 per speech. But what I realized along the way is that the bigger opportunity in speaking is actually the audience wanting to hire you. Because what happened, I would speak to a group and people would come up to me and say, can you work with my team? Can you train my team? Can you coach me? Or do you do consulting? And so I built a business from speaking in a way that I didn't realize I was going to do. I built the business from the audience hiring me for stuff. And now what I do as an expert speaker coach is I take entrepreneurs like naturopaths or doctors who want to get out there and share their message and tell their story in a way that attracts their ideal client. And I've found the formula for the signature speech that attracts your ideal client. And this is what I do all day, every day with entrepreneurs who want to speak, share their story, and grow their business in the process.
I love it. Okay, we have now established that you are the expert, and people are listening. They're like, I would love that, and I've got a business, but I am terrified of speaking, like short of death. People are like, that is the second worst thing I can possibly imagine. I think both you and I are like, how do you feel that way? This is the most exciting and liberating thing to do. But the reality is for a lot of people, they're like, goodness me. Can we just like just dive right into that fear? Because I think if we can confront it and contextualize it for people, we can help them move past it and through it. And I think often that fear comes because people have never been given a framework in order to be effective on stage. They've never been given a framework that can eliminate that fear. So talk to us a little bit about this fear piece. Like, how do you get people past that? Because I think there's such great stories in people. We need to get it out.
Well, you've touched on part of the solution, which is to have a framework and know what to say. When you know what you're going to say, you have less fear. But the fear doesn't go away. What masters do with the fear is they transmute that fear into enthusiasm. So they take this energy that's bubbling up in them before the speech, and they use that energy to perform. Whereas, if you let that energy negatively affect you, you go into hiding, you go into freak out mode. And so the quote unquote fear of speaking doesn't go away, but that energy can be used differently. So there's a couple of things you can do. Physiologically, let me back up, actually. Let me explain where this comes from. It's from the human evolution to survive. Our brain is optimized for survival, and survival equals being accepted by the pack. We're pack animals. We've got to be accepted. When we speak, we put ourselves in the position of possibly being rejected. And our default brain says, worst case scenario, nobody's going to like this. Everyone's going to hate me and throw rotten tomatoes. And so our brain is set to default worst case scenario. We get rejected by the pack. So we overcome this first through visualization of imagining the successful delivery of the speech, which you and I can do because we have historical evidence. We got on that stage. We did a great job. We got a standing ovation. People came up to us and said, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. Thank you so much. And when that happens enough times, your brain is now overridden with this like rotten tomato, everyone's going to hate it situation to, I'm actually pretty good at this, right? And it just takes a couple of pieces of evidence. Now, what you can do to manage the physiology, get yourself in a good space. There's the things you can do months ahead of time, which is get into your yoga practice, get into your journaling practice, get into your mindfulness practice, and chill that reticular activator from your reptilian brain and just get your brain right. That's what you do months ahead of time. But in the minutes ahead of time, take a little walk around outside, listen to those birds chirping, take a little sip of water, breathe a little bit, and put yourself in a healthy state. Don't binge on the junk food. Don't take a bunch of caffeine, and don't do what a lot of people do is to avoid the uncomfortable feelings. They actually put themselves in a state of chaos because the adrenaline kind of gives them this rush. So they find themselves running late the last minute and updating the PowerPoint at the last minute and, getting super busy at the last minute because that adrenaline masks the fear. So that's a bad habit of speakers. So we want to just get into that calm zone, get into that chill zone, go for a walk, take some deep breaths, eat something light, not heavy and greasy. So if you think about the physiology, this is something that is temporary. This fear of public speaking, if it's paralyzing right now, get out there, give a couple speeches, you realize you survive and you're actually pretty good at it. And then it's something in the past.
Yeah, I love that. I'm going to throw in one technique that I use, and I have a playlist that I've made, and my playlist is like, it's my personal playlist. It's my change the world playlist. It's like when I'm down in the dumps, I'm like, why am I doing this? And I put that on and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm on a mission. Mm-hmm. So I have like 2 or 3 songs, and I'm sure you do something similar. I play before I go out on stage because I'm like, well, this is bigger than me. Like, this is an opportunity to further that mission. And the music for me is just such a quick way to get into that state. It's dopamine, not adrenaline. And the dopamine makes me sharp.
There you go. Please share with us the one song.
It depends on the mood.
Uh-huh.
I have 3 songs. Okay. I will, what's that song by Eminem?
Lose Yourself?
Yes. I'll use that. Yeah.
You better lose yourself.
Or I'll give you my 3. Or I'll use Thunder. Or I will use This Is Me from The Greatest Showman.
Ooh, that's a good one. All right. You got a good playlist.
Thanks. Right. That's my speaker playlist.
So a lot of my speaking is actually webinars.
Right.
And interviews.
Right.
And what I do, I'm here in my little, not soundproof, but I got carpet on the floor. I got 2 walls of cloth. So I've got this little like soundproof studio here. Right behind me is a rebounder. So I'm jumping on this little trampoline, and I got my speaker over here. And what I do is I play T-Pain. All I do is win. Uh-huh. And that's my jam. And so I'm getting myself in the state of high performance. And absolutely. Music is one of the most powerful state change tools. And as an instructor and as a trainer, I often do these 3-day events. And what I do is I play the music that was number 1 on the charts while my client was in high school.
So
if I got a bunch of 50-year-old people, I go, okay, so what was number 1 in this? And then they hear it and they just lose their mind.
That's so great.
And they're like, it instantly brings them to a place of joy. Music is very powerful in changing your state.
Wait till our kids are working with you for speaking, and you're going to have to play Baby Shark to get them into state.
Yes, that's right.
Amazing. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about this fear piece, and I really do want to acknowledge that like there is a fear before you go out on stage. I was on a ride last week at this fair, and it was like it takes you up to the top and then it drops you straight down. And the fear, I was like, oh, this is like going out on stage where you have no choice, but you have to show up right now. And you're slightly terrified. And then as soon as it starts to drop, you're like, that was amazing. But it really is real. It really is real for everybody. You're in the ring. Brene Brown talks about being in the ring. It's really super powerful. So if we've got this going on where you're like, okay, I'm going to look into this. I'm going to address this fear piece. I have a mission that I'm living. I've got stuff that I want to do. How do we leverage that speaking piece? Is this broadly applicable to any type of entrepreneur? Have you find it works better for service providers? Like, how are real estate agents leveraging this piece, or lawyers leveraging this piece? What are some of like the really great success examples that you've seen?
So speaking is an authority building activity that goes back thousands of years. And when there's a room of people sitting and listening and taking notes, and a person standing in front of the room explaining things, that instantly implies authority, mastery. If you think about how do real estate agents get their clients? Well, they advertise on billboards and they advertise with flyers, but they all look the same. But what if someone put on a free workshop called The 7 Mistakes to Avoid When Buying Your First Home, and you show up and you meet the guy or you meet the lady and you hear from them and you have a debt of gratitude, which means I owe you one because that was really helpful, right? In that moment, at the end of that speech, there is no better real estate agent for that person sitting there in that audience, because now I like you, I know you, I trust you. I may have even heard a bit about your story, about how you got into real estate. I might be vibing and resonating with why you do what you do. And I kind of owe you one because you gave me some really valuable stuff here. And so if I happen to be in a moment where I'm looking for a house or I'm selling a house, which, if I was at that seminar, in that workshop, I'm probably thinking about buying a home if the workshop is called The 7 Mistakes to Avoid in Buying Your First Home. And then they give a real simple next step, which is, why don't we book a one-on-one conversation to figure out exactly what you want in your first home? My wife's a massage therapist. I'll give you another example. So she used to put on a monthly workshop in her clinic. She's no longer active. She's a full-time mom now. But the monthly workshop would be something like, the 7 stretches to reduce back pain. Okay, so who's showing up? People with back pain. At the end of the workshop, she says, and if you want to make your back pain go away faster and easier, you should probably sign up for a massage. While you're here, pull out your calendar, what's a good time for you, and book your massage, right? So that was good. It would attract new clients. But here's the one talk that gave her referral after referral after referral after referral. She said, you know what? My specialty is TMJ muscle. It's the muscle that opens and closes your mouth, your jaw, right? I'm going to go to a dental school where they're educating dentists. And because she knew that so many dentists their client would come and say, I have headaches and I grind my teeth. And the dentist didn't really know what to do. And they're recommending surgery. And she knew that she can prevent surgery with literally 1 or 2 sessions of massage right on the TMJ muscle. And so she would educate these dentists about the role of massage in reducing teeth grinding and headaches associated to the jaw. And they would refer her and refer her and refer her and refer her. So one speech in front of potential clients will get you new clients. One speech in front of referral sources will give you constant sources of new referrals, because guess what? Now she's the most authoritative person on TMJ massages to those dentists in that room. They don't need to research who should I refer to, because they already met the lady who does the thing.
Yeah, I say this to practitioners all the time. Part of niching is not just so that consumers understand what you are doing. It's so that I, as another practitioner, understand exactly how to refer to you. And someone who is the jack of all trades, it's really difficult to know how and when to refer to them. Even for you, your expertise is in speaking, and you can help people build their businesses in speaking. If you're like, I can just build businesses, it's really hard to know when to send you clients.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that. It's fantastic. So talk to us a little bit about the actual framework that we can consider using when we're stepping out on stage.
Sure. So I'm going to tell you what not to do first.
Great.
And then I'll tell you the framework. And I learned what not to do the hard way, unfortunately. I had a paid speaking engagement in front of an audience that I knew I can help after the speech. So I wanted to make an offer, but I didn't really know how. I had seen other people do it, and I copied what I thought I was supposed to do, and it bombed horribly. So I was in New Orleans speaking to a convention for lawyers and accountants. And I knew that I can help their staff with training because I was doing that kind of training at the time. So I thought, first you give a good speech, and then you make a pitch at the end, right? And then I'm pretty sure what they're supposed to do at the pitch is like they're supposed to like run to the back of the room, right? Because I've seen it happen before, right? So I just figured if I just did what I thought I saw, then that would work. And so I had like 2 completely separate presentations. I had the speech, which I thought was a good speech. And then I had the pitch, which like is a thing that you tack on at the end of the speech. And I did this thing where I'm like, this thing is worth $100,000, and this bonus is worth $50,000, and this bonus is worth $70,000, and all of these bonuses together is worth $372,000.94. But today only, for a limited time while supplies last, it's only, and then it was $5,000. And I thought that's what you're supposed to do. And what happened was I heard one cough, and then I heard a guy in the front row start laughing at me. And I was like so embarrassed. And then I looked over at my client who paid me to come here and give a presentation, did not pay me to come bomb some pitch. And I saw his face buried in his hands in embarrassment. No. He had his face covered. He was like, oh my God. I think he was just like feeling my pain. And he never called me afterwards, never returned my calls or emails afterwards. And I was like, wow, I screwed up that relationship by doing a bad pitch, and I made 0 sales, got 0 follow-up, no interest. And I vowed then and there to figure out how to do it the right way, the classy way, the way that people can feel good and feel invited to work with me. And the one big shift that I will share is that the pitch does not start at the end of the speech. The pitch starts in your title, in your bio, in the description of your talk, in the stories that you tell, because people don't like to be sold to, but they do like to buy from people they like, know, and trust, and that people that they know have answers for them. So with that said, I'm going to now give you the framework of what I call the signature speech. The signature speech is the specific speech designed to attract your ideal client from the word go. It should also be entertaining and valuable on its own, even if people never buy anything. Everyone in the audience should feel like that was really helpful, really useful. It should not feel like that was a complete waste of time. You were just pitching a product the whole time. So there are 3 stories that help people make the buying decision. And in order to make the buying decision, I call this the invisible checklist. They have an invisible checklist in their mind where they're checking off the list before they make the buying decision. The list goes like this. Do I like this person? Check. Is this person like me? Check. Does this person understand where I'm at? Check. Does this person understand where I want to go to? Check. Do I think this person can help me specifically? Check. Do I want to solve this problem now? Check. Do I want to solve this problem now with that guy on stage? Check. So all these check marks have to happen before you're done talking if they're going to buy, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we accomplish that? Well, in the very beginning of the speech, we have to hook their attention, because in the first 5 seconds of any speech, everyone has the same question on their mind, which is this going to suck? And in the first 5 seconds of the speech, you have to answer that question with a resounding, hell no, this is going to be awesome. Then you tell stories. People pay attention to stories. They remember stories. Stories connect emotionally. And there is a story about you that is how you went from where you were to where you are. And I call where you were Pain Island. And I call where you are Pleasure Island. And the journey from Pain Island to Pleasure Island is your story. And it's most engaging when your story sounds a lot like their story. Because the thing that they are most interested in is themselves. As interesting as you may be, they are not nearly as interested in you as they are in themselves. So the job of telling your story is not like, first I did this and then I did that, and this is more information about me. It's like, here's how I'm like you. Here's how I get you. I was once where you're at, and I am now where you want to be, and I can help you. So that's your story. Then the second story, there's 3 stories you tell. The first story is your story. The second story is how you help other people go from Pain Island to Pleasure Island. So that'll sound something like, I met someone who came to me and said, I'll give you my example for my story. She said, Majeed, I've got a big talk in front of a really important audience next week, and I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm freaking out, and I feel like I'm going to bomb it. So I said, I can help. We started working together. We came up with a killer speech that was memorable and unforgettable and really nailed the points, and got the right people to follow up with her and say, I want to work with you. Afterwards, she delivered the speech. She said, Majeed, that speech has set me on a whole new level as a leader in my community. I can't thank you enough. Oh, and by the way, I made $50,000 from client sales at the end of the speech. That's a story. I call that the client success story, where they came to me on Pleasure Island. By working together, they came to me on Pain Island. By working together, we got them over to Pleasure Island. And then at the end of the story, they said the exact words that my ideal client would want to say to me after hiring me, which is, you changed my life and made me lots of money. So that's story number 2, the client success story. So story number 1, your journey from Pain Island to Pleasure Island. Story number 2, you helping a client go from their Pain Island to their Pleasure Island. And story number 3 is the cautionary tale. And the cautionary tale is what happens when someone who's on Pain Island never gets off. Someone who is afraid of public speaking and never overcomes the fear. Someone who doesn't know how to give a powerful presentation that attracts clients and bombs a presentation. And so, in the world of naturopaths, someone who's sick, overweight, never gets healed, dies too young, and on their last dying bed said, gosh, I wish I would have made myself healthier so I could live to see my grandbabies. That would be the cautionary tale that inspires people to say, hey, listen, I'm on Pain Island. I need to get off. The function of this speech, the signature speech, is to help the people make the decision. I'm on Pain Island. I'm ready to get off, and I know I want some help.
We're in the middle of a launch right now, and we've got a webinar going on, and I was like, we're gonna make some tweaks, and that's what I love. I love actionable information. Majeed, you're on it. It's amazing.
Yes, and a webinar is a speech. Don't make no doubt about it.
100%. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the difference between being on a stage and giving a talk and doing it on a webinar. Are there fundamental shifts or changes in tactic or strategy that you need to look at from one versus the other?
Yes, and let me tell you where my advice is coming from. I used to work with a training company called Learning Tree International. They have 721 trainers around the world, and I am their top-rated trainer in the world. And we had a shift from markers and flip charts to online training. And so when I do training for Learning Tree International, we have clients around the world online, which means they are connected to a screen that has internet. And I'm not in the room watching them doing their other things. And I know they're getting emails. I know they're getting colleagues tapping them on the shoulders saying, hey, do you have a minute? And so here's one of the rules that I follow for anything online. I take full responsibility to be more interesting than all of their distractions. And interesting means relevant. So what I'm constantly doing is I'm constantly bringing them back. If we're on a webinar, I'm going to say, chat in the chat box. Hey, if this is valuable for you, chat the word valuable in the chat box right now. And so on a webinar, and again, in the very beginning, if you look at webinar replay statistics, almost everybody leaves in the first 5 minutes. It's that same thing where, is this going to suck? Has to be answered in the first 5 minutes. So what I do is I get them engaging in the first 30 seconds. So I say, hey, everybody, find the chat box. If you're watching the replay, type hashtag replay. If you're here live, say hello and chat. Where are you viewing this from? So the name of your city, chat that in the chat box. Hey, there's Jennifer. Jennifer's in New York City, New York. Hey, Jennifer, what part of New York? You in Brooklyn? You in Manhattan? Hey, there's Jonathan in Chicago, Chi-Town. All right. And I'm reinforcing the behavior. Okay. Behavior that gets rewarded gets repeated. So the behavior is engage, right? And so I'm constantly asking them questions to engage. And a webinar typically has a chat, but even if you don't have a chat, you want to ask rhetorical questions. Like, hey, isn't this awesome? It's a rhetorical question, but it gets the mind thinking, is this awesome? Yes, it is. Okay. And so just imagine them as like the most distracted human being. That's the difference. When you have a captive audience in a room where it's socially unacceptable to be, talking or doing something else, when they're alone on their internet connected screen, and they're used to multitasking. They're used to a video playing in the background while they're doing other things, while they're folding the laundry. You have to change that. For this webinar, you got to pay full attention. For this webinar, turn off your phone. For this webinar, close the door and write a sign, brilliance in progress, stick it on the side of the door, lock the door. For this webinar, close all the other tabs because I'm about to change your life. So you got to get them committed, and they're going to get distracted anyway, and just assume you got to bring them back, bring them back, bring them back.
Yeah, we did that. We've been doing that with our webinars, and it's been amazing. We had 90% of the people still on the call yesterday on our webinar, and we ended up going 2 hours because I was like, I'll stay till you don't have questions. And it just turned into a jam session. And I'm not sure about your feeling on that, but I was like, that's to me, one of the powers of a live webinar. And one of my skills is like working live on the fly. So it was a great opportunity to showcase how I like to coach, because people really were throwing random questions at me in a live context. It worked really well.
So that statistic is amazing. 90% stayed until the end, especially on a 2-hour call.
It was great.
And my opinion on that is, obviously that's awesome. And also, people's relationship change with you forever once they know that you've really heard and understood their question and they really received a personal answer from you. The future of your relationship with that person is forever deepened. So that is a powerful thing that you've done.
Yeah, it was really powerful. And I'm sharing it simply for people who are like, like, what do I do when I get to the end? How do that worked very well for our particular audience. What do we do if our webinar is evergreen? Or you like, didn't do it. But we find the killer formulation. We know that it converts. Ultimately, it's much more efficient if we have a webinar we're putting out there that we are not necessarily delivering live. Have you seen different things that work really well if we're using that online tactic?
Yes. So evergreen means we can watch it in the future and it feels live.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying that for people like, what the heck is she talking about?
It's a little bit, an evergreen webinar is a little different than saying a recorded video because it should feel live. And some of the software actually allows it to, like, you can kind of see the chats coming in as they came in the first time it was recorded. I've worked with a company that spends $100,000 a month on ads, driving thousands and thousands of views into a webinar, into an evergreen webinar, and they're doing $10 million a year, and this is the front of their funnel. They get the same drop-off rates as everybody else. 90% of the people are gone in the first 5 minutes. And so they have a link to apply to work with this company. They don't offer it until about an hour and a half into the webinar.
Wow.
And what that does is it makes those applications highly qualified, because we know that you can sit and watch a video for an hour and a half, which is a requirement of success of this program, because there's a lot of video watching involved in this particular service, right? So that's an interesting thing. And then when you have the opt-in, even the people who left in the first 5 minutes, you can retarget them because you have their email address and you can nurture them and all that. So what to do with evergreen webinars? I say it's better to have one than not. So if you've done a webinar that you felt really good about and you felt it's converting well, then flip a switch to make it evergreen. That's pretty easy to do. You can test running traffic at it. It doesn't tend to convert as well as live, because you don't have that like instant feedback. Hey, Sally from Chicago, good to see you here, right? People know that it's recorded. It's not fooling anybody that it's live. And I would not recommend trying to say this is a real, because a lot of the software a lot of the software says tomorrow at noon. And so they get on there tomorrow at noon, but it's pre-recorded. And I think it's a very powerful way to engage and deepen the relationship. And you can only test what works if you're planning on using an evergreen to drive traffic at it. But for myself, I've got expertspeaker.com/training. And that's in my email signature. That's when someone says, hey, can you tell me more what you're all about? I say, yeah, check out expertspeaker.com/training. It's really valuable training that you really get to understand the results we produce and how we produce them. It's an evergreen webinar. But I don't tell people that, it's a live webinar. It was recorded live. But for some people, it works really, really well to build the list and get qualified leads.
Well, yeah. And you do reach a point in your business where you're like, I just can't do it all. And I love the idea that you do it live. You understand what your conversions look like when you deliver this live. And now you have something to anchor your evergreen results to as well. And you can compare the two of them.
Here's one thing I would recommend to anybody who's new to webinars is do 50 live webinars before you think about having a strategy of an evergreen webinar that you're going to spend a lot of money to drive traffic to, because you get better at webinars by doing webinars. And we live in a time where there exists technology where you can have automatic clients coming in with automatic funnels, and it's very attractive. But the people who are doing these well have done 50 to 100 live webinars already. So practice with live webinars, record them, and the replay is always available. But I wouldn't say your first webinar should be your evergreen webinar, and then your job is to just drive traffic at it, because you're missing out on the opportunity to improve your webinar significantly.
It's like a level 10 marketing tactic.
Yes.
You've got to nail the foundations first. And I feel like that's one thing that's just so confusing for entrepreneurs out there is you open Facebook and you have a whole bunch of new strategies that are thrown at you, and you see all the things everyone else is doing. You're like, I guess I've got to do all of those things. But it's really nice to know that there are varying levels, and you need to know where they fit into your broader strategy. So you're right. Stick it in your back pocket as an idea and an understanding of where you could go with this once you nail level 1. Public speaking and having a strong signature talk has been a staple in my business. It's how I drive traffic to all of my different platforms. I know so many of you have expressed an interest in going deeper on this subject matter as well, which is why Majeed and I are going to be hosting a live webinar masterclass where we go deeper on some of the concepts that he talked about and is talking about on today's episode. If you want to join us for that free masterclass, here's where you can find it. It'll also be in our show notes. But go to webinar.clinicianbusinesslabs.com/public speaking, and you can join us for that live webinar taking place on June 14th. Majeed, this has been super awesome. And I think it's a really great place to transition to the second component of our interview. This is where we get to know you a little bit more. I call these our KPIs, our key performance indicators. Just like we have them with our business, I think we also have them with how we live our life and with respect to our health as well. So indulge me. I've got some rapid fire questions coming your way.
Yeah.
First one, who is inspiring you right now?
Who is inspiring me right now? I would say my clients are. My clients are overcoming their fear every single day. They're sharing their wins with me, and they're getting out of their own way, and they're sharing their message.
Love it.
Yeah.
What is your audacious goal for the next year?
For the next year, my audacious goal is to take off Fridays.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
I might join you in that.
Summer.
Yeah, that's amazing.
This summer.
What is the one thing you are most consistent with respect to your health?
I don't eat breakfast, and I found out there's a word for this called intermittent fasting, and it's actually a good thing. So pretty consistent with that.
Love it. What is something totally badass about you that people would not otherwise know?
I'm a world traveling dad. I live to travel, and I bring my kids along the way.
Amazing. How old are your kids?
3 and 5.
Oh, I hear you. My kids are the same age with an 8-year-old on top. What do you do for fun or play?
I travel. I go to places, and what I do is when I check in, I don't go to my room. If I get to a hotel, I give them my suitcase at the front desk when I check in, and I say, "Hold my suitcase. I'm going on an adventure." And I go exploring. I go geocaching, which is like a treasure hunt around the hotel. So when I travel, I don't just arrive and get back to the airport. I explore.
Amazing. Last question for you. Entrepreneurship. Are we born this way or do we learn to become entrepreneurs?
I think there are precisely 4% of the population that are born this way and 4% of the population that could go either way. And everybody else likes to follow a structure and a plan. And I spent a significant part of my speaking career trying to connect the 4% on the fence to become entrepreneurs, because I think these are the people who are solving the world's problems. But I believe not everybody is built to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and I think that's a fair response. It's my favorite question to ask because we get such varied answers, and it's so indicative of the journey that people have walked themselves. Majeed, this has really been incredible. I know people are going to want to follow up with you. We're going to link all of this up in the show notes, but where can they go to find you? expertspeaker.com. Done. It's in the show notes, everybody. Majeed, thanks so much for being here.
My pleasure.
If you are loving today's episode or you know someone who would benefit from it, there's a few action steps I would love for you to take. First and foremost, head on over to iTunes or Stitcher, hit subscribe if you're not already part of our community so you can keep hearing awesome episodes like this in the future. While you're there, we would love a review if you can take a few moments, but I really want to make sure that you guys get access to this information so you can use it yourself or you can share it further. If you want to listen to this episode again or forward it to anybody else or access our show notes where you can learn more about Majeed and all the things that he is up to, head on over to meganwalker.com/podcast/episode 120. And I also mentioned earlier in the episode that for those of you who want to go a little bit deeper on your public speaking, have a little more clarity around some of the strategies that Majeed was talking about, we are hosting a webinar masterclass. It will be live, so we can take questions. I'm going to host it. Majeed is going to teach, and here's where you find that. You go to webinar.clinicianbusinesslabs.com/public speaking. And this is going down on the 14th of June. If you can't find the link, you can always send us a message through Instagram or through meganwalker.com or wherever you happen to find us. We'll make sure that you guys get hooked up. Guys, thank you so much for today. You all totally rock. Go put your message out into the world. Keep doing the amazing work that you are up to.
If you enjoyed our conversation and would like to hear more, head on over to Stitcher or iTunes and subscribe to the Anthropology Podcast. We would also really appreciate a quick review. When people have their health, they can change the world. Let us keep you healthy and you go change the world.